But you can easily find multiple notes. And it doesn't always have to be your money. You know, like I mentioned before, if you're partnering with someone else, you know, you can go in, both of you, and pool some of this money together and buy these notes.
This episode brought to you by Suites at Madison. Meeting and conference rooms for rent by the hour, week, month, or year. Suites at Madison, where business gets done. Check them out at www.downtowntampaoffice.com. Now, on to the show.
You are listening to the Invest Florida Real Estate Show, covering topics in lending, buy and sell strategies, property management, hot markets, and tips and tools to guide you along the way on your path to real estate success. You want Florida investment real estate talk? You have come to the right place. And now, our hosts, Eric Odom and Steven Silverman.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Invest Florida Real Estate Show. This is your co-host, Eric Odom, along with Steven Silverman. Steven, we're in the dog days of summer, as they might say.
Well, we're in summer, but you're going away tomorrow, so
I'm going away. Then I come back, and you go away. I take 3 days, and you take 3 weeks. It's equitable.
Well, that's just fair as long as it's 3. But so tell me, you're going on a bicycle trip?
Yeah, we're going to go do a little bit of cycling in France, and it's going to be good. I mean, it's good to get away. Can't really stay away for too long, but it's always good to get the break.
So I don't want to get too technical, but like your bike, is it 2 wheels or 3 wheels?
You've been waiting for the opportunity to say this on the show for years, and I've not given you that opportunity yet. But yes, I do ride road bikes. I'm a road cyclist, and we're pretty flat. We're flatlanders here in Florida, so getting the opportunity to ride, whether it be in North Georgia or in the Alps in this particular case, or the Rockies, it's a lot of fun, and certainly can move a lot faster on 2 wheels than on 3. But thank you for asking.
You're going to ride up the Alps?
Going to ride up the Alps with
a whole group of people?
Yeah,
I guess that's social climbing.
Yeah, that's social climbing. That's exactly correct.
It's not that appealing to me.
One of the bad things about leaving is how busy it is here, man. We've got a lot of things, a lot of irons in the fire, and it's tough as brokers because as soon as you get on the plane, I guarantee you, and the same thing's going to happen to you because you're going to Italy. You're going to get on the plane, you'll be standing in line, and your clients are going to call with some sort of emergency.
Yeah, that's the way it is, but it's a busy market in all directions now in Tampa. People are looking at it not only from the rest of the United States and internally, but also from foreign countries. So we're busy, and it's important always just to stay focused and make sure that our clients do the right kind of investing.
Yeah, we see a lot of activity. We get calls almost weekly now from folks in South Florida that just the caps have been so compressed down there that they can't find good deals. And of course, we're seeing serious cap compression here in Tampa, particularly in the multifamily market. But people are, Orlando and Tampa are, we had fortunate enough to have somebody talk about what's happening in the multifamily market here a few episodes ago, and they're climbing north, and Jacksonville's getting hit too. So, it all rolls downhill. It starts in South Florida, and then we get hit next, and it's making us hop. But it's good. I mean, you can't really complain. We're doing business. Hey, today we've got a little bit of a different episode. We're going to talk notes today, Steven.
Yep, it's real estate, but it's real estate with a difference. So I'm looking forward to learning something here.
Yeah, and this part of the cycle, it's probably not a bad idea to think about it. Rather than try to pound a square peg into a round hole. Maybe you can buy a note and get yourself a more steady cash stream. Of course, we're going to be talking about distressed notes, which might be a little bit more volatile. But regardless, this is a topic that I'm excited to hear, Steven.
Well, let's roll into it. Today we have with us Nahir Solis. Nahir is the managing director of MJS Notes Financial, an investment firm specializing in real estate notes. MJS Notes Financial manages vetted note investments located in Florida and nationwide for individuals looking for steady returns, making it easy for anyone to invest in notes. Nahir had a love for industry led her to note investing, and several years ago resulted in the formation of MJS Notes Financial. Originally from Puerto Rico, she grew up in Orlando and is now relocated to Tampa with her husband Matthew and 3 adopted children. Nahir, welcome to the Invest Florida Show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Hey, Nahir, we really appreciate you taking the time and talking with us. Before we got started here, you were telling us a little bit about how you got into notes, and what I see in notes typically are the older investors that have been around the block a few times, who don't want to worry about tenants, toilets, and trash anymore. And they're kind of moving on to the next stage, and the note tends to be like they'll go out and they'll lend to fix and flips, but that's not your story. So why don't you tell us kind of how you got into it and why?
Yeah, I guess my story is a little bit backwards. So we got into note investing because, like I had mentioned, we got a phone call, and the phone call was from the agency that we had signed up to adopt through. And we were told that we were matched to 3 siblings and they needed to be adopted very fast. So we needed to make up our minds if we wanted to adopt them or not. And it threw a big wrench in the plans because before that we had been, my husband and I, we had been studying on being real estate investors. And, we were so excited about going out, fixing and flipping and, maybe wholesaling a little bit and eventually become landlords. And we were just thrilled to pieces about it. And then we get that phone call, it just kind of put everything on hold. But it was an exciting time, to welcome the kids. We literally went from 0 to 3 kids overnight. They were not even 1. They were almost 1, almost 2, and 3 years old at the time. So they were very young. And it was kind of insane. We were living in Orlando at the time, but my husband decided that the best thing for our family was for me to be able to just stay at home for a little bit and kind of welcome them home, and for him to find a better opportunity than what he had, to support us. So I said, go for it. You can go from this side of Florida to this side of Florida. You can't go anywhere else. So we ended up moving to the other side of Florida, over to Tampa. So we're excited. We've been here in Tampa now about 2 years. It's been amazing. It's a great community to be a part of, but we were overwhelmed with the kids and everything. We finally got settled in, and the only thing that I could do was keep studying. So I told my husband, I was like, well, eventually we're going to start the business, and I know I don't want to go back to work full time because now we've got the kids. Why don't I just, continue, and we'll kind of figure this out and we'll see how we can dive in. So he said, yeah, go for it. And I literally worked around the kids' sleeping schedules. I educated myself on real estate investing, and I continued that. One day I came across a podcast. Someone had mentioned seller financing as a good strategy for investing in real estate, and I didn't quite understand. Basically, when you have a property that you own and you want to sell it, instead of just outright selling it to someone, you create a note on it. And that note, you're over the life of that note, you end up making, sometimes 2, sometimes 3 times the amount of money that you would have made if you would have just sold the house outright. So my ears perked up, having a financial background. I was like, oh, wait, what do you mean you can make 2 or 3 times the amount? So I started looking up what this was, and I stumbled into the world of note investing, and I realized that there is an entire industry that trades notes just forwards and backwards. I mean, all different kind of notes, commercial notes, business notes, car notes, mainly the ones that we focus on obviously is residential notes. So we started to look these up. We started to invest in them with some of our own money, and we said, oh, this kind of seems really interesting. And what happened was we started finding more notes than we could buy, but we thought we're still really good investments. And we said, well, why can't we find other people who might be interested in this as well?
Well,
so we figured out, hey.
Can you tell us about the first note you bought and what the deal was?
Oh, that's a really good question. The first note that we did, The first note that we did was actually it was a mobile home that was on land. So it was affixed to the land, and it was not here in Florida. It was actually in North Carolina, which is one of the beautiful things about note investing. You don't have to do it local, but we bought it for, oh boy, all the numbers kind of escape me. I think it was like $31,000 that we purchased it for. Now, mind you, when you purchase a note, you're purchasing a percentage of the unpaid balance. So at that point, what we were paying for was about, I want to say like 65% of the unpaid balance, probably less. I want to say maybe like 60. And what we ended up doing was it was a non-performing note. So which just means that the borrower had stopped paying on it. The house itself was worth almost $65,000. So obviously, the amount of money that we were into it, if we ended up having to foreclose on that note and take it back, obviously we're still making a really good amount of money.
Now here, I'm a little confused. Mm-hmm. You say you bought the note what at 60% or something? What do you mean by that?
Good question. So when you buy a note, you're basically just buying the mortgage on somebody's property.
Correct.
So instead of a bank being the lender, you become the lender.
Correct.
So we purchased the debt on this mobile home. And the debt, you don't actually buy the entire debt, you actually buy a percentage of it. So I think they owed like, boy, I wish I had those numbers in front of me, and I apologize.
Are you saying that you're buying the debt but at a discount?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're buying 100% of the note, but it's at 65 cents on the dollar.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Makes sense now.
And if there's already equity, then you're already coming into the situation well secured, because if anything happens to the borrower and they stop paying, or you have to see that property back, then not only did you buy it with equity, you also bought it at an extra discount.
Sure.
So if you're looking at your debt to the actual value ratio, it's a lot more than just going out and buying a regular property. So we saw it was a good fit, and I said, let's try it out. Let's see if we can, snatch this up. And actually, what we wanted to do was work with the borrower and find out what exactly was going on. We found that it was a mom that was living there with 2 kids, and she, for some reason, had stopped paying on it. It was only like 4 or 5 months before. We found that she still lived there, and she still wanted to stay there. So we worked with her to start paying again. And eventually, we actually sold a note as a performer. So we were only in the transaction for, I want to say, about 9 months. And when you sell the note as a performing note, you can sell it at a prime rate. You could sell it maybe like 80, 85 to 90% of that unpaid balance. And so you make the difference. So if I bought it at like 60 and I'm selling it at 90, then I just made that difference within just a few months. Yeah,
just on for example, at 100,000, let's say there's 100,000 left on a balance, and you paid 60 cents on the dollar, and you turn around and sell it at 90 cents on the dollar after it becomes performing, you made $30,000.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So why did the person who sold you that note not foreclose themselves and get the $60,000? Is it just too much of a hassle for some people to do that?
That is a great question. And you never quite know. So note investors come in very different varieties. So you can find note investors that are in it to get the house. Like all they want is non-performers that are pretty much vacant. Give me the house. That's all they want. And then you've got a lot of investors who just want to cash flow. They just want to be more passive. They don't want to have to deal with it. And as soon as a problem goes wrong with the note, they just want to get rid of it as soon as possible, even if they just end up taking a small break on it. So they're just like, okay, just get it off my books as fast as possible because I need my books to be as clean as possible. So you don't really end up asking why they're selling the note. You just find out, is this a good deal for me? Is this a good deal for our portfolio? And is it a good investment overall?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how do you go about finding these notes?
There are a lot of different ways. The ones that I find extremely plentiful are from a lot of the larger dealers of contract for deed kind of notes. So these are contract for deeds that are, the what do you call them? The actual investment firm themselves own the property, and the borrower pays on it over an amount of time, and then after they finish paying it off, then they'll go ahead and assign the deed over to the borrower. So these contract for deeds are like a dime a dozen. I mean, there's so many out there. You could really find them very easily. But there are other platforms that you can find them also. You can check out Paperstockcom. They've got a huge variety of traditional mortgages. So these are more of exactly what you would see that a bank would do. And sometimes you can even tap into lenders, like some of the smaller lenders. You don't even need to tap into the larger lenders because there's so many of these, what we call pools, which is just like a spreadsheet full of different mortgages on them. There's so many of them that you can't really purchase them all. So usually you kind of start off small. So you buy off one note here from this investor. You'll find another one. You network with someone else, or you sign up for these emails and they get delivered straight into your email, and you dive in, do your due diligence, and figure out which ones are best for you. And then once you start growing your portfolio, you can start taking down more notes at a time. So when you can start taking down more notes, and by taking down, I mean purchasing them in bulk, basically, you can negotiate the prices down a lot better than if you were just buying them one-offs. So, like, for example, my first note was like 60% of the unpaid balance. Well, if I would have bought like 10 of those same notes, then I probably could have negotiated down to like 40, 45 max. So, but obviously you're purchasing 10 notes at a time. So that is actually why we started partnering up with other investors and started finding other people that we can work with, because as we started coming across some of these smaller pools, we realized that it's a lot better to do this almost like teamwork. Like,
yeah, sure. Pooling the money, of course. Economies of scale. Absolutely, yes.
So what kind of rates of return are you looking for on notes?
Well, we have currently been focusing on the performing notes. And basically what we do now is we find good notes that have been, performing for years, usually a year or two at a time or more. Sometimes they've been doing that from the very beginning. And we'll actually find investors that are looking for these performing notes, and we partner up with them and we manage the entire thing. And it just depends on the investor. Some people are very passive and they'll just take, 5%, 6%. And then there's other investors that are like, I don't want less than 12%. Anything 12 and over, come and talk to me. So it kind of depends on the taste of whoever we're working with at the time and the note. So if I find a note and I see that it would be a good fit for like one investor, then I'll basically pitch it to them and say, hey, this one looks good for you. Do you want it? Or, same thing. Or if it's non-performing and I know somebody in that town that's probably going to want to buy it, I'll pitch it to them and say, hey, I've got a non-performer. It's in your area. Do you want it? It's already vacant. And we'll basically deal the note out that way. Or sometimes you end up with it in a small pool. Like if I bought 10 notes and I really only wanted 8 of them because 8 of them were great, but there's 2 of them in there that just are kind of sticky and hairy and I don't really want them, I can just sell those off. I don't really want them. So if I find someone else that'll purchase them, it all depends on what their ROI is going to be at the end of the day. So they range on what kind of note it is, the kind of market, and they'll go anywhere from, just a few points, maybe like on a big unpaid balance. Like here in Florida, there's notes where, there's plenty of houses here that are over $300,000. So if you get a note on a $300,000 house and you're only making like 4% off of it, well, some people are pretty happy about that. They're okay, getting a bigger note. But they totally range. But a lot of the contract for deeds, because they're considered higher risk and they are usually lower valued assets, a lot of the contract for deeds will actually go anywhere between like 8 to 12 on average. Mm-hmm. And that's annual ROI.
Now, you mentioned Paperstock.com. What are some of the other sources that you go to try to find deals?
There's a bunch of them. Boy, off the top of my head, I can think of Direct Connect is another one. Paperstock is huge. They're actually located in Orlando, and they've been growing their platform very largely. I was talking to their guys probably, I want to say maybe not even a month ago. They were talking about starting to add some very large pools on there. So they're going to be bringing in a lot of inventory. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the day, everybody just starts using Paperstock. My suggestion would be to go on there, register for it, and set up your profile so that you get emailed alerts whenever a note gets posted that fits your criteria.
Sure. That's
probably the best way. But there's a whole slew of different places you can go to. Watermark Exchange is another one. Some of the...
What you say, Watermark Exchange?
Yeah, Watermark Exchange is another one. A lot of the servicers will actually have their own pages. Like if you go to like MadisonManagement.com, they'll have like a whole page of people who they currently service notes for who are looking to sell their notes. And usually they're probably wanting to sell to get into a different kind of venture or whatever, different note altogether. But a lot of the servicers have like their own investment kind of pages where you can find listed notes. Mm-hmm. So there's tons of places that you can actually just find them.
Sure.
Once you start wanting better prices, though, you have to think very strategically. So you have to start connecting with asset managers and you have to start negotiating those prices down for like the bulk discounts. So I have maybe, I don't know, like 5,000-6,000 emails, contacts with asset managers, and I'll take a group of those and I'll follow up with them. I'll try to call them. I'll try to connect with them. I'll see if I can get them on LinkedIn and try to chat with them. I try not to do direct emails to them because most people are pretty annoyed by that, but yeah. I want to be able to get in their faces, and meet them. And unfortunately, most of these people aren't just in one location unless you go to like some of the big conferences, which is that's exactly what you want to do. So you want to go try to get these people's ears up front. So that way, when they see you at the conferences, they could put a name to the face and say, oh yeah, I remember talking to you, or, oh, I remember your email, or something like that. And they'll kind of connect that way, and your foot's in the door and they're willing to talk to you. And there's thousands of them out there.
What's interesting about, well, it's not interesting. It's newbie investors. It doesn't matter whether you're notes or you're buying the actual underlying asset. It doesn't matter. They'll call, then they'll say to us. I mean, we have them at our meetups that I'll talk to them and they'll call in, they'll send us emails and they'll say, I try to call this asset manager at this bank, or I try to call this asset manager and he's rude. He doesn't return my phone call, or she doesn't return my phone. They don't understand that these asset managers have, and I'm sure it's the same in the note business. They have 80 hours, 90 hours of work to do every week. And, there's only 40 or 50 hours in the week. So they're having to pick and choose. And you're calling about one note. They do not care about you. Mm-hmm. It's too hard for them to process everything they have to process when you're just dealing in nickels and dimes. And this is, one of the things that, when the last time the market turned down, people were saying, hey, I try to call these banks and no one, they must be doing really well because they don't ever return my phone calls. Even when the properties have lifted, it's because they don't care, man. They're trying to, they've got such a massive pile of things they're trying to move. They only want to talk with people who can help them move that pile, not one at a time, one straw in the in the pile, of straw at a time. So why don't you, what is the number? Why don't you tell us kind of what the number is to start getting their attention? And I'm sure small lender versus large lender, it's going to be different. But what numbers do you need to be at to try to start getting attention to people? 500,000, $1 million, 10 million. What is that number?
I would say if you can get together anywhere between like $150,000 to $250,000, you can get their attention pretty fast.
Okay.
Because some of these guys, they might have a small pool to get rid of, but speed is the name of the game. If that money is already in one location, or it's very easy to move around and close like within a week, they're going to be more apt to close with you. And then what happens is that usually if you close once, they'll go back to you every time they have a pool.
Sure.
And it will be hard. They'll be calling you instead of you banging on their door all the time. But you can easily find multiple notes for and it doesn't always have to be your money. Like I mentioned before, if you're partnering with someone else, you can go in, both of you, and pull some of this money together and buy these notes. Now, don't what we call cross-contaminate. So it's like you both have some kind of vested interest in the same note. You need to pick and choose. You got to say, okay,
sure,
A is for me, B is for you, and split them all up, because then that can kind of get a little sticky.
So let me ask you a question. When you're looking at these notes, do you get an opportunity to understand the value of the underlying asset?
Yes, you have a due diligence phase. So basically what happens is that when you get a note or you come across one, you want to do some of your preliminary due diligence, which is running some of your information online, checking to see if there's liens on the property, checking to see, who owns it. And then you can also do a little bit of a deeper dive and run like title report. And you can even send somebody out there to take a look at the property, maybe do like a broker's price opinion, or maybe call up some realtors to drive by the property. But that's when you start kind of spending money on it. Up front, there's plenty that you can do to get to a number that you can offer. So if I get a note today and I look at it and I do all of the online stuff, by the end of that due diligence phase, like the preliminary stuff, I've got a number in mind, and I'm going to go back to the seller and I'm going to say, hey, I'll give you $50,000 for this note. Will you take it? Yeah, maybe. How about 53? And then, okay, so you negotiate it a little bit. So you lock in a number, 52 or whatever. And then once that number is locked in, then they'll tell you when your closing date is. Usually it's within a week. That's the one thing about new investing. It's really fast. So within that week, that's when you have to do all of your deep dive due diligence. That's when you pay for the title reports and you ask them for their collateral package so you can see what they have. That's when you actually send somebody by the house and make sure that the house is still there. Yes, it's true. It has happened. House is no longer there.
So you talk about due diligence. In real estate investing, you do due diligence when you've already tied up the property under contract. And during that due diligence period, if you find something that you don't, first of all, have you already contracted for the note and then you've got a due diligence period and you can back out during the due diligence period if something doesn't work? Or are you doing your due diligence before you even make an offer?
It's really two sets. So you've got like all of the online stuff that you can do that's totally free. And then once you basically lock it in, and I'm kind of doing air quotes, I know you can't see, but note investing is a little bit more casual. So once you agreed on a number, that's basically saying, I've got it under contract, but there's literally no contract.
It's a handshake?
They'll say, okay, I'll hold it. I won't sell it to anybody else. We're going to close in a week. Are you okay with that? Yeah, sure. That's fine. And that's when you start doing like your deep dives and making sure that it's a good note.
No, that's interesting because, the risk in the underlying asset, in other words, the fee simple real estate, is that the buyer, the seller, they entered in that contract because someone's going to start spending money to get that closing done. And if you don't have a contract, there's a risk that the other party might default and you want that in writing. But in notes, I guess it's because there's more repeat type of business that, you don't enter into those agreements because, if somebody screws you, first of all, you're not getting, $3,000 appraisal reports like you would on a piece of commercial real estate, or $10,000 appraisal report. So the numbers might be a little smaller. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Nahir, but the numbers might be a little bit smaller. And if the person, because you're repeat buyers, if the person screws you, you're not going to go back to them again. The relationship's pretty much severed. So that's accurate.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. But you're only spending maybe like $80 on a title report. The bigger ones is maybe like $150, kind of depending on the asset or where you're getting it from. A broker price opinion can vary. I mean, that could be anywhere from like $100 to $200, $250. If you need it right away, you're usually paying a little bit closer to $250, but it's cheap. But volume is the key. So if I'm running due diligence on 10 notes at a time, then it can start to get a little bit pricey. But the thing is with note investing is that your reputation is everything. So
Sure.
You can't go out there and tell people you're going to do something and not do it, because the community is small. We're all on Facebook pages. We're all in the same 3 masterminds. We all know each other. And as soon as people figure out you're a deadbeat, your name starts getting literally put on blacklists. Like there are literal lists that are shared on Google Documents.
Oh, gosh.
Do not buy from this guy. He's a bad seller, or don't use this broker. They're bad news. I mean, it's a small community. And once you start networking with these folks, these are the folks that are going to have your back, are going to help you out with different transactions, help you out with sometimes with paperwork or checking out an asset. The community that you grow really becomes like one of your biggest assets in the industry.
So the question I want to ask you is, I assume, although you didn't mention it, that most of the notes that you're buying are on residential type properties. Is the residential type properties different from the commercial? Is there a difference in yield? What are the typical yields in your portfolio now in residential, and how would it be different in commercial?
Commercial is a whole different animal that we have not stepped into yet. And the numbers I have only heard of varying from, anywhere from 10 all the way up. I mean, it's like the minimum. That's why we wanted to start digging into commercial notes ourselves. But the thing is that we have so much business with residential that we haven't had the need to really step into the commercial.
Sure.
And we understand it so much better.
Yeah.
But there's so many commercial notes out there. And I mean, you'd be shocked to see what kind of commercial notes are out there. Apparently, from what I hear, they're really easy to foreclose on. You get the properties back way faster. There is probably less paperwork. From what I understand, there's actually less paperwork on a commercial property note than in a regular one. But obviously the due diligence is a little bit different, and you need to understand, everything that entails buying a commercial property. And that's kind of why we've kind of shied away from it. And there's actually one of the big educators in this space. His name is Scott Carson. He's got his biannual online seminar. He's actually going to be teaching. He's like the first one to do this. He's actually going to be teaching on commercial notes actually this weekend. Yeah, it is this weekend. You literally sit at your computer or on your phone for 3 days, but you get so much information. I know it's insane, but it's 3 days of live webinars. And he's doing what nobody else is doing right now, which is teaching on commercial notes. So, of course, I got my ticket. I'm totally lined up for it.
Well, good for you.
I could probably answer that question a little bit better in another week.
Well, the other thing is you don't have to worry about DoddFrank with the commercial properties. Always the concern for me when I'm ever engaged in any type of residential lending where there's owner occupied residents. You've got this nasty law that was passed, in 2010, DoddFrank, that if your I's aren't dotted and T's aren't crossed appropriately, the borrowers can wiggle out of their obligations, and you can really be screwed. So what are you doing about you making sure if you got some sort of regulatory check to make sure that the income verifications and whatnot were met on the owner occupied dwelling? Obviously on investment dwelling, it doesn't really matter. But if the borrower is also the owner and is also the resident, then you got an issue, right?
That is correct. You're actually right about that. The first thing you want to do when you get that collateral package from even before you actually close on it, that's one of the due diligence pieces that should be included is for you to actually get eyes on the note, even if it's virtual, like if you get a scanned copy of whatever that note is and the agreement between the borrower and whoever the firm is, you want to look at it and read it and make sure that it's not like crazy out there. But even if you find one that's crazy out there, the first thing that you should do, if it still seems like a good investment to you, is get it converted to something that is DoddFrank compliant. So, if the numbers look good to you, and there's some wiggle room, where you can probably contact the borrower and say, hey, there was a mistake and it's in your favor, but it's still a win-win for everybody. Then you can actually work with the borrower and say, we're going to need to do a new one. We are now your new lender. And most of them don't have, any issues with that. And there is actually a really good website. It's called calltheunderwriter.com. Mm-hmm. And they spell out everything that has to do with Dodd-Frank. They even have like a preliminary application that you can fill out with all of the investment information, all of the borrower's information, and you could plug it in and it'll tell you if it's Dodd-Frank compliant, because it's that complicated. Like it needs formulas.
Oh yeah.
So it's actually pretty good. But if you ever wanted to create a note, it's actually a good website to use too, because they will, if you have someone that is compliant, they'll actually create the contracts for you, obviously for a small fee, but it's a great way to be able to do a seller finance note without having to like go through an attorney and
sure
all of those crazy things.
Tell us about the conferences that you like to attend.
Ooh, there's a few good ones. I have been favoring some of the ones that some of the IRA companies have been doing. Okay. But a good one's like Notes Expo. What IMN is huge. They're a little bit more expensive, but they've got some really, really good stuff. And IMN actually does a lot of stuff here in Florida. So a lot of their conferences will be here, but those are probably like the biggest ones that I'll try to get to. I haven't even been out to IMN. I wanted to get to it this year and my schedule didn't work out with the kids. It's a little harder to get out of the house sometimes, but that was on my list for next year.
So what is your business model? I mean, do you actually find the notes, like take a small percentage and then get and then get them to investors? I mean, do you do the grunt work for them?
Yes, that's exactly what we do. So we actually do everything for our investors. The kind of investors that we work with, they're like, you know what, I've just got this extra $30,000. I can't, go buy a property with that. So what can I do with it? So I'll go and I'll find a good note, run all the due diligence on it, make sure that it's a good investment. And then we actually board the note with our servicer, get it recorded under our name. And before we do any of that, we sign a joint venture agreement and become partners with them. And we, depending on the notes, we'll actually own part of the note, anywhere from like 12 to like 20% of it, depending on the note and how much work there's going to be involved in managing it. Some of the really simple ones that are very basic, got great histories, we won't even rock the boat. Like we'll actually sign up with their servicer and keep them paying to the same servicer and just keep up with making sure that the insurance is paid, that the taxes are being paid. And we send our investors a quarterly check from all of the funds that come in. And if something goes wrong, if a borrower, heaven forbid, falls off the face of the earth somehow, which does happen every now and then, we'll go through the entire foreclosure proceedings for them because everything's technically under our name, under the the recordings. So we go through all of that. We work with our attorneys and go through all of that. And we actually pay for whatever percentage it is that we own the note for. We actually pay for those, that percentage of the expenses as well. So we become like true partners in it all. Only we manage all of it from beginning to end. And our investor just gets, like quarterly reports or however they want, like a monthly report on how they're doing. We even created, we signed up to have a portal. We're actually launching it here like another week or so, but we've got a portal with our investors can actually log in, see their investments whenever they want, see their ROI, see how they're doing. If there's anybody who's not making a payment that's just not coming in, they can take a look at it that way. But it's we make it easy. We make it as easy as possible because honestly, it can be very complicated, especially when you're first getting started out. And if you're already like a landlord that's got like all of these, properties, or, let's say like if you're a doctor or something like that, you just don't even have the time. You're working so many hours, you just got some money that it's laying around. You don't want to just have it sitting out there. You want to get it out to work, then notes is a really good option. And we try to make it as easy as possible without having someone to go through learning all the due diligence and learning, what pitfalls to slide, and learning about DoddFrank and learning about all the crazy websites that you have to be part of. It's possible, but.
So Nahir, it's a fascinating concept. If people want to talk to you further or get more information, how can they contact you?
Yes, absolutely. The first place that I would send it would be our new website, which I'm very proud of. It's TampaNoteInvestors.com. We just launched it last week, and you can find us on the contact us page. You can sign up to get education. You can get more information on our meetup because we also host a monthly meetup here in the Tampa area. You can also reach me directly if you ever want to contact me. My phone number is 813-252-0917. You can also schedule a phone call with us from our website. Make sure that we've got some good time blocked out for you. There's a few ways. You can email me also at nsolis@tampanoteinvestors.com. So there's a few ways that you can get a hold of us.
Awesome. Nahir, really appreciate the time you spent with us today and teaching us about notes. I certainly learned something, and we look forward to seeing you. We have to tell our listeners, Nahir's a regular visitor of the suites. She comes by and does and hosts meeting here, and so we get the opportunity to talk with her more. So really appreciate your time, Nahir.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Nahir. Nice talking to you.
You too, Stephen. Have a good one.
And that was Nahir Solis talking note investing. And we love having the note guys. I don't really have a lot of the note guys come on the show, Stephen. I think this is the second or third we've had, and it's always fascinating to me. It's a completely different deal. But what were your thoughts about listening to Nahir?
Well, we spend so much time just focusing on real estate that it's interesting to see this kind of investing, which has a totally different dynamic, and the pace is so rapid. But it seems like they're good returns, and the downside is protected if you do it right.
Self-directed IRA guys, notes are great tools. So, if you've got some money sitting around in an IRA, this is something you might want to think about. If you've got a self-directed 401k, if your company will allow you to do this type of investing, some of them won't. A lot of your typical Schwabs and Merrill Lynch's are not going to allow you to do this type of investing. But if you take it to an Advana or an Equity or one of the other self-directed companies, you can do the notes, and they're really good matches for this type of investing because you're not paying taxes on the interest, right? So it's something that really works inside of an IRA or some sort of other protected retirement plan. So, Stephen, Nahir was a great guest. Where can we find other great guests?
So the place to go to listen to all the information we've accumulated on the podcast is www.investfloridashow.com. You can download the app, listen on your mobile device. But the advantage of the app, you can listen to this. There's a lot to digest. You can listen to things again and again until you get it right. But there's a wealth of information there for us all.
Guys, as always, we appreciate the time that you invest with us each and every episode. And until next time, hasta la vista.
You've just listened to the Invest Florida podcast with Eric Odom and Steven Silverman. Join us every week for actionable real estate investment ideas, and of course, visit our website at www.investfloridashow.com for more shows and tips on how to earn a cash flow in the real estate market in Florida. While hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show have no reason to doubt the validity of comments of our guests, we do not warranty their accuracy. Please check with your legal, financial, and tax advisors before entering into any investment. Returns will vary from person to person and deal to deal based on unique circumstances. All information expressed in this show is for educational purposes only. Opinions of the guests are not necessarily shared by the hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show.